It is a pleasure to meet you at this opportunity to add more brief to previous video message on what concern economy structure enhancement and economy financial structure enhancement on a specific. It is an example of a list of other financial tools or framework of financial tools. A simple question, as everybody knows, U.S. economy is much bigger than anybody can imagine. U.S. economies, and it comes to U.S. economy, each state has economy, and it does bring U.S. economy. There is a simple question. It is very important. It does relate to previous message. Does U.S. economy has a foreign exchange market turnover, which means does U.S. economy has foreign exchange markets? I won't say market, I will say markets. The answer is no. Why? Another simple answer, or the availability, that U.S. economy foreign exchange reserves remain between $140 billion to $160 billion for almost more than 2 decades, which means U.S. economy does not have the foreign exchange market turnover, which brings much of growth, and it is an indirect critic to the financial authorities, Federal Reserve districts, Treasury Department, and the financial authorities in United States Congress. It is an important and with other related issue, I want to refer to the testimony of Treasury Secretary Jack Lew nomination, his honor testimony. There is a question, I mentioned it in previous video message, when he asked about cheap finance. His honor, and everybody knows, his honor served director for the federal budget, the White House, during former President Bill Clinton administration, and during President Obama administration. Which means he's supposed to have a previous idea when anybody, doesn't matter which field you graduated on, or your field of expertise, or any, but it does mean he's aware about the several types of finance, which means the budget revenues and expenditure. The question was related to was about cheap finance, and his honor referred to question 30B, which means it is the Federal Reserve area or field. And I mentioned in previous message, it is Treasury Department with Federal Reserve, but it's most of it concern Treasury Department, and it is an important area. And let me just try to involve or engage the entire academic institutions in general, and the School of Economics and businesses on a specific. When they learn economics, they don't get that much to focus on alternative finance. The factors of production, it does focus on the main real income, which brings the the simple equation: income, consumption, savings, and investment. And from there, the other definitions or derivatives comes to, but the main focus, the main frame works on the real income growth cycle, and that's what suppose the entire geographical areas to focus at, as in businesses too. What I'm trying to mention, it is very important for the there are a number of things refers to cheap finance, including the issuance of securities, and there are a number of securities, and it does include government-sponsored enterprise, which means the answer of his owner has two meanings. Either he gave the part of the authority to the Federal Reserve, or he's trying to keep part of the focus to a Treasury Department, but either direct or indirect ways. It is an important, very important area, because more than half of the U.S. economy debt comes from the cheap finance, and the Inspector General appointed about 48 delegates to investigate a number of things relates to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in certain periods of time. It's not too far from today, just to keep things on course. And it does happen everywhere. Third world countries, they bring the heaviest punishment on those in those areas, because it's a very tricky, and the advanced economies, they have these kind of attention to these areas, and it is very, very I won't say restricted area, but it's very they treat it very, very cautious, with more attention. And it does give me another reminder to what Dodd-Frank, Wall Street, and Consumer Protection Act made on what concern government-sponsored enterprises, exempted those in those areas, made an exemption to government-sponsored enterprises. It does put the Congress on focus to give more attention to these areas with direct connection to economy structure enhancement. The $26 trillion gross solution, it does maintain a number of areas, and it does give Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the Federal Home Loan Banks, about 12 financial institutions, more ability to maintain growth on real income area and keep the financial alternatives, the cheap finance for its function, investment, and as much as an additional resources. And I mentioned on a business session the entire $8 trillion of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac debt can be cleared with defining number of things, tabulating number of things, and they come with at least $2 trillion each growth or surplus. And it is a pleasure to get on those areas as fast as possible. Their owner, the President of the United States, their owner, Congress, Senate, and House of Representatives committees, and the Federal Reserve districts, and his owner, Treasury Secretary. It is a very important area, and do not forget the American investors, well-known American investors, received a loss of $40 billion. Their Mr. Bill Gates and Mr. Warren Buffett, well-known American investors, because of this area and what created on the financial markets, they received about $40 billion loss, and that is they're supposed to get more courage to invest for more growth to geographical areas and to their businesses. And that is a main focus on solutions which brings economy, financial structure enhancement. And I just mentioned an example. If U.S. economy has foreign exchange markets turnover, there will be much of availabilities to each state, but before that, there are a number of things needs to exist to give huge growth to states and their cities. And do not forget, I mentioned several times that city of Los Angeles are entitled to receive between $2 trillion to $12 trillion growth on their city budget, which means about $6 trillion on average. City of Detroit, which placed on a state emergency, they are entitled to receive $2 trillion, but it does need economy financial structure enhancement. It doesn't take that much. 24 hours brings $26 trillion, and it does maintain a number of important areas and enhancement to allow more other enhancement to generate more growth. It is huge economy, and it does give their owner, the federal government and the Congress, Senate and House of Representatives, a huge break to focus on contract and contracting on not less than on more than 226 main and derivative industries, and they won't get that much headache on Budget Control Acts 2011 and the consequences which brought the budget sequestration, which brings more cuts, more taxes. Today news brought growth on retail industry, retail businesses industry, with between 4 to 6 growth levels. They could multiply their growth, but with the budget sequestration and the financial obligations on national debt and other obligations, inflation, they get deduction on this kind of growth, visible or invisible, but it does reflect on any type of growth, and it does keep the investment position, as everybody knows, on a negative growth. It is important to focus on those areas, economy, financial structure enhancement, and what relates to cheap finance, which brings more attention to a number of areas. It does concern Treasury Department, it does concern Federal Reserve Districts and the issuance of the securities in direct connection with other financial tools, and an increase on financial networks. Economy financial networks brings much of growth. On financial tools brings much of growth on the economic activities, and that's require an effort on U.S. economy, microeconomics, financial structure, and the U.S. economy, microeconomics, financial structure, to bring more financial networks, to bring more financial tools, to become more efficient on what you just hear at the beginning, foreign exchange markets turnover. It brings trillions of dollars, and it does give other areas more access for growth. It is a pleasure to bring the brief, and it does connect to a previous video message, and I hope solutions find the way as fast as possible. $200 trillion on industrial development, which is an important issue, division or unit in U.S. Congress concern the industrial development, or National Governors Association, or the National Council, National Economic Council at the White House, or National League of Cities. This division concerns the industrial development is very helpful. You just heard about $26 trillion solution. It does concern, it is part of the industrial development. It does concern U.S. financial industry. Thank you very much, and I hope with other more brief things becomes much easier to start on those solutions. And 6% of total gross amount is the business service charge. It is a pleasure. Thank you very much for listening.